My name is Sean Millerick, and this is Marlins After Dark. Why? Because no team keeps you up late at night, crying into your pillow like the Miami Marlins. We'll briefly recap tonight's game and then get into the historic start. That's right, history was made today by the Miami Marlins as they continue to improve on their own exciting record as they are now 0-6. As yesterday, they were 0-5 for the first time in franchise history to keep things rolling today, falling to the Los Angeles Angels by the score of 3-1. All right, gallows humor and kind of the approach, to take here. There's not much positive to say, not too much to take away. A very fast, breezy game where not very much happened tonight, maddeningly enough. As far as the Marlins are concerned, over the course of this game, if we were to have to highlight the MVPs for this performance, guess we had to give some credit to DLC, going yard for a home run to put Miami on the board late, put a bit of a charge into the team, but the team would fall short. We'll also give a shout out to Pepito, the Rooster, for winning another race this season. Always good stuff for the fans in attendance. I think I heard that about 9,000 was the attendance for tonight. And if they all stayed to the end, God bless them. And then we'll go with Brian Hoeing. It was 3.2 innings out of the bullpen. Did technically give up a run that Luzardo had on base when he came in to take over, but 3.2 innings, saving the bullpen. Miami only used 2 pitchers in this game, which sounds crazy compared to how the season has gone so far. So it's a few too many games this season where the MVP has arguably been a bulk reliever. That's got to stop if the Marlins are going to turn this around. But I'll throw him out here. And before we get into the main substance of the show, I don't want to spend too much time on this game, really. There's just not, too much to really cover that's, worth looking at. I will just issue this brief PSA. If you've just been moaning about the Marlins and locked in on that, I will let you know that the Heat did beat the Knicks tonight. In resounding fashion, Scary Terry went off for 34 points, and it's always good to beat the Knicks, so we at least have that. Don't look at the Panthers score, but he beat the Knicks, so there is that. And there are 2 teams in this market that should make the playoffs. They should easily make the playoffs in 2024. That being said, let's talk about our LVPs. From the game today, Jonah Bride continues to occupy a roster spot. While I guess you got to think that he's just hanging out until the Marlins, get a better defensive option up there to take the place of him. We'll also have to give some attention to whatever happened on the base paths in the second inning, I believe. During a double steal attempt, we had Avisel Garcia take a pretty maddening swing at a point in time when he actually should not have swung. It's not often you're asking for Avi not to swing during an at-bat, but that would have allowed runners to advance to second and third. Could have been a big difference in the game. And then Jazz, who did not have a hit today, did have 2 walks, but did go hitless, and also ended up that inning where the double steal did not happen actually ended when Jazz ran past third and forgot to step on third on the way back to second, which, in case you didn't know, that could result in an out. Now you do, and so that was a big rally killer, and Marlins really needed that. And so Jonah Bride just still seriously underperforming, for the team. The Marlins earlier today did designate for assignment Jacob Amaya after trading for Emmanuel Rivera. So trying to get some defensive help, different bat in the organization. Really kind of felt like they could have just designated Jonah Bride today and made it work somehow on the roster. That's just one man's opinion. but those should be my LVPs for the game, for the players that are in the building for tonight. Not too much, too much else to really get into with this one. Jake Berger, who'd been one of the real constant bright sides so far this season, did cool off with an 0 for 4 night, but as he's been the one offensive bright side, can't hate on that too much. A lot of weak contact by the Marlins tonight. Really, once I kicking myself for not taking a closer look at the pitching matchups in this series. When the Marlins are getting off to throughout their history, when they're off to a slow offensive start, when you see soft tossing lefty on the schedule, that just screams red flags, even though the Marlins were much better against left-handers last season overall. But soft tossing lefty, funky delivery, the Marlins weren't hitting that, and they weren't. They did not in this game. 7 scoreless innings from Anderson today for the and that's just not that just can't happen. That can't happen from a team that made the playoffs last year, from a team that was aspiring to be competitive. A lot of rushed at bats, guys swinging at the first pitch, inducing weak contact, not having good at bats, and just not putting any solid contact on the ball. And here Miami sits at 0-6. Which, while I think plenty of us on Marlins Twitter were a little concerned going into the offseason. As you may recall, the Marlins did nothing of consequence at all, aside from rolling the dice on Tim Anderson. The Marlins had the worst offense in baseball in the National League last season. Made the playoffs anyway. Skin of their teeth, a lot of hustle, a lot of heart. Incredibly unsustainable good fortune in one-run games. And then they lost their best power threat from that lineup. They lost their second best hitter from that lineup, and just thought things would be better going into the season. That plan is not going the way that it was at least publicly said to want to go. And so we've got a 0-6 team that has been pretty lifeless at the plate, which guess we'll just start drinking and get into what this team needs to do, what's gone wrong. One question that really seems to be being kicked around is this on Bendix? Is this just a result of a flawed plan by Miami's freshman GM? And I've seen a lot of this talk, and it's the one thing that mystifies me. I mean, frustration over this start, that I totally understand. Be pissed, be angry. You should be pissed and angry. You deserve better than this as a fan, than having to put up with this crap year in and year out. Or at least that's how it seems. But blaming Bendix for this, all I can think of every time I see that, I just go back to that scene in Moneyball when Brad Pitt's Billy Bean is asking for just a little more money in the office, and the owner of the A's is just sitting there in his chair, just trying to ask him to be comfortable, not spending money that he at least claims not to have, and to just go and replace the players, like it's that easy. I mean, that's the villain, in this story. If you want to, be upset that Birch Smith or Jonah Bride are on the roster, that's fine, and I am too. But it's not like they were going to be, it's not like that was going to be Blake Snell and JD Martinez in that case. There's no way Bruce Sherman was signing those checks. Me, at least personally, and I don't have any sources in the Marlins front office, I got to think this was, handed down from the top. That, okay, sure, go make a competitive roster, but you're not increasing payroll past this point. Don't add $1, spend less, and see what you can do. And that there had to have been some kind of shared upon plan that this was a punting season. Seen lots of talk about, are the Marlins getting ready to blow the whole thing up and rebuild? And I think that's extreme. I don't think that's what's happening. At least not yet. And another, if there's another long-term injury, Jazz blows a knee, Yuri Perez tears something during rehab, and then is going to be out for a year himself, then sure, then we're probably actually hitting the rebuild stage. But punting isn't the same thing. I'm kind of to the point where I'm choosing to believe that the moment Sandy had surgery in the offseason, they never decided to seriously contend in a meaningful way in the 2024 season. But I think they still might in 2025. I still think that's very much in the cards. That being said, I think something that's going to hang over this season, the whole season, no matter what happens, whether the Marlins win their next 8 games or they lose their next 8 games. I think Marlins fans need to prepare themselves for if there's a moment where Peter Bendix does think that he can get max value for anything in the Marlins organization, anyone except for Yuri, because I do believe that he is viewed as untouchable, that he will do so, and that he will move that piece. Well, probably except for Yuri and Sandy. He'll wait for Sandy to come back and reclaim value and prove that he's back. I think that was the thing that stood out to me the most about the John Birdie trade, was that we thought the shoe might drop on that for a while. It seemed like there were duplicates on the roster, but he waited for the Yankees to be seriously screwed, having multiple injuries in the infield, and then actually needing to move a piece like John Cruz to get that help as soon as possible, because that's a winning team, a team that wants to win right now. Marlins don't think they're about winning right now in 2024. And if there's another trade that does the same thing, if another contender gets desperate, has a major injury at first base, I think Josh Bell can go at any time if this trajectory keeps up, if the Marlins don't recover from the start. And that, again, anyone but Sandy and Yuri, that applies to him. That certainly includes tonight's starting pitcher, Jesus Luzardo, who had another almost quality start. Certainly the best pitcher in the Marlins rotation right now, but just without any offensive help behind him, was not able to get it done tonight. But so before thinking that this is just the sky is falling, that this is the worst that it's ever been for the Marlins, I would pump the brakes on that. I'm not convinced that is the case. Is this the worst start ever? And that's kind of what I'm building to. That's what I'm going to be writing about later tonight. Try to have that piece out in the AM. But is this the worst start? Technically, yes. The Marlins had never been 0-5. They've certainly never been 0-6 for you math whizzes, at home keeping score on that. This is the worst start ever in franchise history. And the fact that came on the heels of a playoff season is horrible. And it was entirely preventable. Even if the Marlins were punting on this season, there were better options. They could have added more players to 1-year deals without risking serious assets, be those assets be capital or prospects, to improve the roster. There's no reason that Gio Urshela shouldn't be a Marlin, that J.D. Davis shouldn't be a Marlin at the price that he signed, that Michael Lorenzen shouldn't be a Marlin. That there should be a little more depth in the system. That there's no reason that John Birdie shouldn't still be a Marlin. Really, if we're going to play that game. Although that one, maybe that's debatable if their plan really was to punt. But they could have done a lot of things and chose not to. But at 0-6, is this the worst start ever? Or is the sky completely falling? And I'm going to say no. I think there have been multiple cases where things have been worse. Starting with just simple math, there have been worse starts. 0-6 could turn around very quickly. If 0-6 ends up being 3-7 by the end of the week, I think there's the negative tweets or and comments on social media, they're cut in half. It's still very early. If they had just they had won, if they had split against the Pirates, dropped this series, lost the next one, then we're frustrated. They're treading water. and 162 game season, you get screwy samples, right? It's hard to read anything particularly into that. Ball bounces a different way. Things seem very different. It's the fact that they're 0-6, that it's 6 losses in a row, that's really been the kick in the nuts as the season gets underway. So I'll give you 5 examples, times that it's been worse, or at least as bad. The Marlins have been 1-7 before. The Marlins have been 1-9 before. They've been 1-6 on 3 occasions, and they've been 1-9 before. Again, there have been some really bleak starts to the year, in Marlins history, and I would put all of those probably ahead, or at least we're going to go through them really quickly here, just to really see if that's the case. Because again, I know it feels really bad right now. And I'm sorry, I actually misspoke on one of those. One of those starts was even worse. So 1995, let's start with that. Marlins are 1-7, and I want to start with 95 because that was the last time, one of the 2 times there was a start of 0-4 or worse. That was in the news when the Marlins started this year 0-4. You were told that 2001 and 1995 were the only other times they'd been 0-4. So put yourself in the baseball fan mindset in 1995. Those assholes, those overpaid millionaires. Baseball was ruined, coming off of the strike. No one liked baseball. People like baseball movies. Still riding high on Field of Dreams and The Sandlot, but that's about it. Marlins sucked. They weren't good. They had not had a winning season in 2 years. There was no reason to believe that this season would be any different, and it was not. The Marlins, marginally improved over the previous 2 seasons, something they did do, in the early years, continual improvement, but kind of knew it was going to be a losing season, and just, not that crazy about baseball. 1998, the Marlins started that season 1-11. That was a lot worse. Sure, they got a win. They got that win a little, much earlier on. They did not start 0-6, but does that win really mean anything? From like the soul-crushing heartbreak you were experiencing after the core of a World Series team was ripped apart? What about in 2006? Marlins were 1-6 then too. Marlins could be that again. They can match that record tomorrow. So then too, whole core had been blown up just at the start of a rebuild. Was that as bad? And that's one I kind of want to come back to. 2013, Marlins were 1-9. Then opened that season 1-9. Technically, they got a win sooner. That was much worse than what's going on right now. 2013, the Marlins had just got their new stadium the year before, had blown out the budget, had signed Jose Reyes, had got that middle of the pack payroll that they lied through their teeth to the commission in Miami that they'd be able to sustain. And then they didn't. They blew it right up, traded all those salaries. Now, were there serious flaws with that roster? Did that team arguably need to kind of be rebuilt? Sure. And if the Marlins had asked for Noah Syndergaard instead of Justin Nicolino, maybe we're not even feeling that bad about that rebuild. But they didn't. And Marlins history is such as it is. But 1-9 start, to me, that's probably the low point for me. And then 2015, Marlins started 1-6. So again, got to win sooner than this team did, but not convinced that that was any better of a situation. So it's like, look at that one, that 2015 season. Because there are some similarities here between 2015 and 2001 that I think are focusing on. You had a team that was good the year before, and there was the expectation that the next year would be better. In 1995, there were no expectations. Just you thought there'd be more suckage. In 1998, your heart was broken and you had no expectation of the team being remotely good. 2006, core had been blown up, rebuild, didn't expect anything. But yeah, 2013, again, no expectation. 2015 and 2001, that other time they started off 0-4 or worse, both those teams were supposed to be better. Resources have been, there've been resources put in. There was a hope that things would continue to improve, and it did not happen. So I do think this start is worse than that, because in 2001 and 2015, the team did try, put lots of money into the roster, tried to make the team better, and then it just went horribly. I think we all know that went completely to shit. 2015 saw Mike Redmond fired after a 16-22 start, the same 16-22 start that got Jeff Torberg fired in 2003. So back then you had an owner who was crazy enough to believe that was repeatable, that Jack McKeon magic. The only thing that was surprising was that he didn't hire Jack McKeon again to be the manager in that 2015 season. Almost have to believe he just said no, we didn't want to replace Mike Redmond like that, for that not to have taken place. That's one thing to feel better about this 2024 start for the Marlins, by the way, is I think there is at least the case that there's more stability for this team. 2015, so, didn't really have a good feeling about the front office. Weren't that crazy about Dan Jennings. And then Dan Jennings got made the manager after firing a manager. None of that is taking place with this team. You hire Peter Bendix, you're hiring him for multiple years. This is not a GM that was hired to be handed a checkbook and write a bunch of checks and turn the team into a contender where there could be a 1-year expiration. Bendix is here for 2, if not 3 seasons, pretty much regardless of what he does, until it's safe to determine that whoever he picks in the first round of the 2024 draft is just as useless as who the Marlins picked in the first round of the 2018 and the 2019 draft. You're going to see him. You're going to see him hold that job down. Likewise, Skip Schumacher isn't going anywhere. Just won Manager of the Year, and won Manager of the Year in a fashion that all the players to a man, including the leader in the clubhouse, or at least the purported leader in the clubhouse, Jazz Chisholm, fully supports him, has his back, champions him as a driving force behind the team last season. He's perfectly safe in his job. If this losing streak continues, if the Marlins drop another 6-7 games and are underperforming to a point that you think an owner would consider making that move, if a couple Sundays from now the Marlins decided to fire Skip Schumacher, Monday morning the Yankees would announce they had fired Aaron Boone, and which would be really embarrassing for them, because the Cardinals would have fired Oliver Marmol Sunday night. The night before, had already sent a private jet to pick him up and bring him home to St. Louis. Schumacher is easily one of the most respected managers in the game. He's not going anywhere. And so I think there's that stability that you can feel good about. There's good pieces on this team still, which was not the case. There are known quantities. That Luis Arias is a good baseball player. That Sandy Alcantara is a great baseball player. that Yuri Perez is a great baseball player. You really hope that Jazz Chisholm is a great baseball player. And you go down, and we can pick some other players from the lineup as well here. Pieces that you feel good about, that you can build around if you stop being a cheap soul-sucking bastard and decide to do it and to actually build around the team. Those pieces exist. You didn't know that in 1998. You didn't know that in 2013, except for Stanton. You found it out pretty quickly in 2013 with Jose Fernandez, but going into that, one piece left, you weren't sure. 2006 is the one exception of where that was another bad start that is mathematically worse, that may actually be better off than where this team is now. So I think at that point, you had a good run. Core got multiple years to try to contend to get back. They had won a title. You still had that going for you. And then, you had all these, pieces coming in, and you had seen it work before. You had seen the rebuild, as annoying and heartbreaking as it was when they blew up the 97 Marlins. You won again in 2003. So you'd seen a rebuild work. So when it was happening again, it was kind of exciting. It could be a little revisionist history looking at it that way, but I at least remember being kind of excited to see if it could happen again. And it was a really fun team to watch. A lot of talented pieces came together really quickly. By the end, it was a fun season after a very rough beginning to it. Right now, just kind of disappointed, just kind of underwhelmed, just frustrated with the front office. But there are some things that the team could build around. And again, this could all be moot, by next week. If the Marlins beat the Cardinals and they win tomorrow on getaway day, you're already starting to feel a whole lot better. And then this whole narrative is going to flip to, hey, when's Cabrera coming back? When's Garrett coming back? We can start playing the drinking game we used to play with Sixto Sanchez in respect to how many feet Yuri Perez is throwing from. And, counting down the days till his return. And it's just, they need to stay afloat. And hopefully they could, hopefully they can turn it around. I would say even still, I'm not changing my series expectation, my season-long expectation for the Marlins to win 77 games. Give me a week before I turn it around and decide they're only winning 60. Close. I'm not quite there yet. So could turn around. Getting very worried that it won't. But so we'll just have to see. Still, it's early enough in the season that if a couple pieces get rolling, I think they could recover here. But just to close before signing off, and I did tell myself, I joked on Twitter that I was going to flip a coin between being calm and measured on this, still have the tea, or just going scorched earth. And it's really tempting because this was so preventable. Could have done just a little bit to improve this, and it was just so obvious. It would have taken so little to actually make tangible differences that I think the reason I'm not just losing it completely and F-bombing the hell out of Bruce Sherman and his penny pinching ways on this is that I just have to believe this was the plan from the jump. It was only so angry I could be that for seeing this roster play out if I think they knew this was going to happen. And because I think a lot of the frustration is how stupid are these people making these choices for putting the wrong people there. And I just think they're evil. I just think they're cheap. I think they actually have this, this plan in place to, if you're not going to make a deep playoff run this season, then okay, they want a better draft pick. And if they do decide to use all these pieces before giving up on them in 2025 to make a run, okay. But if they don't, then I think I'm going to be joining the growing line of people who are proclaiming that this could be it, that this could finally be the straw that breaks the back and causes you to become Rays fans or causes you to become Cubs fans or causes you to just start binging stuff left and right on Netflix and not caring about baseball anymore. But then again, we came back after all those other miserable seasons that I just outlined. If you count starting a baseball franchise as a rebuild, there have been 5. This would be a rebuild, or at least this would be rebuild number 5. If that's what's transpiring, and we've made it this far. So I imagine most Marlins fans will end up coming back after another one. But this is just about the worst possible way they could have started a season. Here's hoping that we feel a lot better about it, that AJ Puck steps up and delivers a great performance tomorrow. I think he will. I think we'll see a bounce back, but until then, I remind you of the PSA we mentioned in the middle of the show. The Heat did beat the Knicks, and Sandy Alcantara is still Miami Marlin, and that's really all the good news I have for you for this. So we'll end it there, and until next time, This is Marlins After Dark. Go Fish.